So, Luca, let me go ahead and introduce who we have on our
Very
show.
excited. Very
Yes,
excited.
yes, yes, yes. So, everyone, this is Matt Roja. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Matthew Roja, yes, indeed.
Okay.
Matthew Russia.
And as everyone knows by now, we feature people who are extraordinary, but don't often show that extraordinariness when most people around them don't realize how extraordinary they are. But we know that Matt is quite extraordinary, and we know this because he has so many talents, so many gifts, and such a big brain. And he's also learned how to be open about his neurodivergent status and how to best work with him, how he works with others. Not only that, he is writing a book on how other people can work with those who have neurodivergent diagnoses. Is that the right way of saying it, Matt?
Yes, the book is called
Okay.
Neurosocialism. It's being published by Beacon Press. The tentative release date is 2027, and it argues that neurodivergent people need to both exhibit solidarity with individuals of the various diagnoses that fall under the neurodiversity umbrella, and also
Uh-huh.
lean into their traits rather than mask their traits, because neurodivergent people have tremendous gifts, unique skills that they can bring to the workforce. They need to lean into those skills, and employers need to recognize those skills rather than screen people out because they display idiosyncratic traits as a result of their diagnoses. That's the
Right.
thesis of the book.
Yeah.
So I want to go deeper into that, Matt, but I think your background is one of the most unique backgrounds of any human being I've ever met. You have interviewed the who's who
Seriously.
in in this world. So of the people that you've interviewed, like who are the most well known? Let's tell everybody exactly. You're a writer and you're a journalist. So
I
who have you
interviewed
interviewed?
President Jimmy Carter. One of the reasons I spoke to him is
Oh,
because he signed Section 504, which is a statute, or to be more precise, and part of a statute that protects people with disabilities from discrimination in employment and in public buildings, in education, and in other important social contexts. I've interviewed former Secretary of State and presidential candidate John Kerry,
oh
George
yeah.
Takei from Star Trek,
Oh,
Elmo the Muppet on Sesame Street. I interviewed more recently. I've interviewed Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who I think is very much underrated as a progressive. I've interviewed President Trump's NIH director, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who
Wow.
is obviously much more conservative, but also a very nice man who I've befriended. I've interviewed President Donald Trump's advisor, Roger Stone, who referred to me by an expletive that begins with
ugh.
the word mother. And
Wow.
that was
Yeah,
a
he's a
lesson.
piece of work. He's a piece of work, in my opinion.
Your opinion is correct. I don't even think he would disagree that he's a piece of work.
Yeah,
He just,
probably not. Yeah.
he just wouldn't view that as a bad thing.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's definitely a who's who of
Oh,
people.
that doesn't even begin to listen
Yeah.
to people.
One
And you
that probably means the most in terms of this conversation is Temple Grandin. She
Oh, yes. I know
she
Temple Grandin, but you'll find out later. Yeah.
she is she is, as you know, autistic, and she is an advocate for people with autism being given jobs that speak to their strengths. One of the points she has made to me is that many people who are autistic, especially those who are visual thinkers, excel in crafts, excel in shop classes, excel in jobs that require mechanical skills where they can use their hands and their eyes and their brains to build things, to be engineers, to be mechanics. And this is something that she believes should be encouraged. But again, very often people who are autistic get screened out of those types of jobs unless the potential employers are taught how to view autism. And I want to emphasize that neurodivergency is not only autism. One of the common misconceptions is that the terms neurodivergent and autistic are interchangeable. But in fact, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, bipolar disorder, even forms of acute anxiety are all neurodivergent conditions. And those conditions all lead people to displaying traits that can get them screened when they apply for a job, or can get them screened when they seek a promotion at a job they already have. This is where the book Neurosocialism and where my column for this nonprofit where I've been volunteering at, Backseat Socialism, comes into play. I know the term socialism can be scary to people, but I'm a democratic socialist. I support democracy. In fact, I would say that makes me more of a small d Democrat than the President of the United States.
Right.
But at the same time, I believe that democracy without a strong social safety net and without strong regulations to make sure companies don't discriminate is not really free. As Franklin Roosevelt put it, necessitous men are not free men. I would change that to necessitous people aren't free people. If you need food, shelter, medicine, housing, clothing, all of those things, and you can't get them, then you're not really free. I would even say if you don't have transportation, internet access, people say, why does this person who's unemployed have a cell phone? If they don't have a cell phone, how are they supposed to take a call and get a job?
That's right.
And that is why I'm a democratic socialist, because I come at it from the angle of being neurodivergent and wanting to build a coalition among the different groups of people who are neurodivergent.
That's terrific.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So talk to us about, you mentioned everything that falls under the domain of neurodivergent. And you also mentioned that there are traits that are exhibited. What are some of those traits that hiring managers may see and not realize what they're seeing?
For instance, if you have Tourette syndrome, you may exhibit vocal tics or facial tics. If you are autistic, you may struggle to make eye contact. If you have acute anxiety, you may seem nervous even though you're actually confident in yourself simply because of how that impacts your mannerisms. If you have bipolar disorder, you may once again display traits that just seem quote unquote abnormal. I have talked to many neurodivergent people for my book, and I would say the words weird and annoying are common code words for this person is neurodivergent.
Right.
I would add, I don't think the employers even know that the person is neurodivergent. It's an insidious form of discrimination because very often the person doesn't even realize they're discriminating. They don't think this person is neurodivergent and they might be brilliant at the thing that they're asking me to hire them to do, but they also have these traits that are abnormal in terms of conventional behavioral expectations. They don't think in that sophisticated way. They just think this person's weird, this person's annoying. Next, and it doesn't go any farther than that.
They're not telling the candidate that, though, right? They're not. They're just.
They've been. At least one person I know was told you are abnormal.
Abby, let me ask you a question, Matt. Tell me how you feel about this. Because I was working. I have a friend, and we were working together. And she has ADHD, and I thought I was under the impression that there was a certain way that her thought process worked that was not helping her in her interviews. Would you advise to tell people that, hey, I've got this neurodivergent trait and this is how it shows up? Or are you more on the, hey, look at everybody needs to, who's hiring people need to just know about this and think before they say abnormal or weird or anything that potentially that's something.
I am very firmly in the camp of full disclosure.
Okay.
And there are two reasons. The first is if people fully disclose from the outset their conditions, they are not pressured to mask. They are not under any, because masking, by the way, is a term for when neurodivergent people try to conceal traits that the rest of the world, the i.e. neurotypical world, consider abnormal. That is a very draining process for neurodivergent people to undergo.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, even if you're able to somehow slide through the interview while masking, and then you get hired, now you have to keep that up for the entirety of your professional life, at least with your current employer. Maybe some
Ugh,
people can do that, but I have not met anyone who has found the experience to be anything other than painful.
right.
That's reason number one. Reason number two, on a broader social level, we need to set the precedent that these are not things to be ashamed of, that being neurodivergent is no different than being a man or a woman, or black or white, or your height or your weight, or any other superficial characteristic. That is the goal, and if you feel the need to conceal these things, the implication is that they are shameful.
I'm
Matt,
glad you
what's the
I'm glad you said that because that was my instinct as well. But I think it's hard for people who are thinking, well, if I say this, now it's even more out there, and the discrimination is going to be there. This is what I said. The discrimination is going to be there no matter what. So you might as well just put the cards on the table. Does that resonate with you?
That is very accurate. I also will say that sunlight can be the best disinfectant, and that if you illuminate the reality of neurodiversity to certain employers, they will in fact embrace it. One of the people I've interviewed, Temple Grandin, is very near and dear to my heart because she focuses on the idea of educating people, of not viewing the employer as automatically the antagonist, but rather as someone who might realize this is a transaction that will have great value to both parties as long as I learn a little more about science in this regard. And some people are hostile to that, but
Yeah,
not everyone is hostile to that. And I believe everyone deserves an opportunity to be the good guy.
that's awesome.
wonderful?
Thank
Out
you.
of curiosity, of the population, just in general, what's the percentage of our population that actually lives with a neurodivergent?
It is estimated that between 15 and 20% of the global population has a condition that could be considered neurodivergent, ranging from autism to ADHD to Tourette syndrome to obsessive compulsive disorder to dyslexia, dyscalculia, I always mispronounce that one, dysgraphia, etc.
What
That's a
is
lot.
discalc? I can't say it. Discal
Dyscalculia. Dyscalculia. I always want to say
Dyscalculia.
dyscalcula. It seems like you said dyscalcula, but there's an I between the L and the A.
Dyscalculia. Yeah.
Dyscalculia.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
guys are over my head.
The point,
Oh,
the point is, I believe that there are a lot of people in the workforce who recognize this. Even some people I despise, like PayPal CEO and Donald Trump advisor Peter Thiel, has talked about how people with autism can be great employees. Unfortunately, in Thiel's case, he's saying that because he wants to recruit them for fascism. I would rather recruit them for not fascism. Was I not supposed to say that? That Peter Thiel?
no, no. Please say that.
With that in.
I saw
Yeah.
you react, and I was wondering if I crossed the line, but I
No.
don't care. That man literally says that there is an antichrist and that he needs to hunt that person down and turn
Yep.
the world into a Christian-dominated sphere run by technological oligarchs like himself. But he also likes autistic people, likely because we're very intelligent and easy to exploit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Luka. It's a good, it's a good one to take.
Christian oligarchy or, nice to not neurodivergent people.
I'm not sure he's nice to us. I meant what I said. I think he believes we're smart and easy to exploit.
Oh, well, then that's
I believe
equally evil.
it is, and that's the concern. There's a term that Robert Chapman, a British philosopher who's on the spectrum, wrote a book called Empire of Normality. And he coins the term extractive abandonment, in which people who are neurodivergent and possess great gifts will be noticed by employers, but because those employers know that this person also can't really negotiate or read social situations effectively, they exploit them. And the term is extractive abandonment. It's the idea that they will extract the value they can from you and then
then let you
abandon
go.
you.
Yeah. So when you say that people will take advantage of the intelligence and the talent of someone with a neurodivergent what is it called? Neurodivergent diagnosis or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You did ABD on your PhD. And so if for people who don't know what that means, it means all but dissertation to get your PhD. So
Yes.
what were you getting your PhD in? You completed all your coursework.
Yeah, I completed my coursework. I passed my comprehensive exams. Then my dissertation advisor, John Pettigrew, passed away from cancer. If it is very common for people whose dissertation advisors die that late into the process to basically have everything fall apart. That
Mm.
was what happened to me. I encourage people to look up this phenomenon. It's not directly related to neurodiversity issues as on a broader scale, but if you look into it, it is a problem of graduate students basically being left high and dry if their advisors die.
Oh.
But what I was writing about was President Grover Cleveland, who during his first term from 1885 to 1889 did something very unusual for a president. I need to provide a quick bit of context. In this era, it was about 20 years after the Civil War, and the government had provided a system of generous pensions for Civil War veterans and Civil War veteran dependents. That second part, Civil War veteran dependents, got gradually broadened and broadened and broadened so that by the time Cleveland was president, there were millions of people receiving what today would be called welfare benefits. Cleveland opposed this, and so what he did was he found individual cases of people whose claims for pensions he felt were fraudulent, and then he vetoed their claims because some people had to seek pensions through what were called private pension bills, which were laws passed in Congress granting a person a pension. And Cleveland vetoed hundreds of individual claims. He would do research into individual cases, going through
Wow.
medical files, going through their court records, finding out everything he could. And then if he thought someone was seeking a pension for fraudulent reasons, he publicly shamed them with veto statements that called them out. And I read these veto statements. There are several hundred of them. They're fascinating documents. He has a very snarky sense of humor. It reminds me of Governor Chris Christie, who, like Cleveland, was born in New Jersey, and also someone I've interviewed several
Okay.
times, in fact. Um, and there definitely, in my opinion, was an ableist streak in what Cleveland did because a lot of the cases he vetoed were cases where, in retrospect, the person clearly had PTSD, but Cleveland would simply say they were nuts. So, like, for instance, there was a woman whose husband, after returning from the war, basically couldn't hold down a job, became an alcoholic, and killed himself. And Cleveland argued, well, if he killed himself, what does that have to do with his Civil War service? Looking back 140 years later,
All right. We
such
know.
a connection can be made. In Cleveland's partial defense, people didn't even know what PTSD was in the 1880s. But to offset that little bit of grace that I was giving Cleveland, there is still such a thing as compassion. You don't need to know what PTSD is to know that someone who fought in the Civil War might be messed up. Also worth noting, Cleveland did not fight in the war himself, despite being eligible. He instead paid a substitute to fight in his stead.
You could do.
Sounds like somebody else we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Cleveland, it took a lot of audacity. In another case, there was someone who claimed that he had ruptured his side from being thrown forward on a saddle during battle. And Cleveland mocked him, saying, "That's ridiculous. That couldn't possibly happen." And I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but basically the idea was that couldn't happen. And my immediate reaction was, "How the hell would you know? But
You weren't there. You
you're not,
you
you're
didn't
not
have any
on
experience. Yeah.
if you're not on horseback having bullets flying past you, you don't get to describe whether or not you could get injured on the saddle."
Yes.
So I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the work that you do and the work that you're looking to do. What type of work are you looking to do next? Like what do you want in your portfolio next?
I have a tremendous, first of all, I can tell you what the mission is. We need to fight against fascism, which is taking over this country. I have over
Amen.
a dozen years experience writing about politics, writing about issues in science and culture that intersect with politics. I also worked for the Northampton County Democratic Committee in an elected official until as an elected official on the county level until I resigned after being hired full-time by Salon. But I have tremendous experience in these areas, and my goal is to use my skills in the ways that employers think will best help me fight what I am being literal in saying is the rise of an American fascism. I don't believe I'm being hyperbolic. We are in an unusual time. We have the curse of living in interesting times in history, and you don't always get to choose the role that you play. Sometimes life chooses that role for you. If you live in the United States of America, you live in an era where the President of the United States, a corrupt Supreme Court, and a gerrymandered Congress are going to work in cahoots to roll back democracy, except in regions which are traditionally Republican. And once they've accomplished that, they're going to roll back women's rights, roll back LGBT rights, roll back civil rights for racial minorities, roll back civil rights for religious minorities, and yes, roll back civil rights for disabled people, such as the neurodivergent community. That is why in my book, Neurosocialism, I say that neurodivergent people shouldn't just form a coalition with others in the neurodiversity spectrum. We also need to form it with other marginalized groups in general. We are all stuck on the same sinking ship, and the hole in that ship is fascism. So whether we like it or not, if we want to do the right thing in this era of history, we need to work together and plug up that hole.
I think working with you would be a fantastic opportunity myself on any subject matter, because you know how to extract information from people, synthesize that material, and then communicate it in written and verbal form, which is a gift, right? That's the gift of a reporter and of talented writers. So we did the right thing, Luka, don't you think, in bringing on this extraordinary human being who
yes,
others might
absolutely.
not see how extraordinary that he is. But
Thank you so much, Lee.
Matt, there are people out there, and you know this, whether they're neurodivergent or not, they don't see what's extraordinary about themselves. They go through life thinking that they just exist. They don't realize what they bring to the world. How would you help them to find that piece of extraordinariness within themselves?
Don't mask. 2 words. Don't mask. You are going to always hear people, even people who think they're giving you good advice, tell you to mask. And I want to emphasize, and this is something I've struggled with for a long time, when people would tell me to mask, I would listen. And then for a long time, when they would tell me to mask, I'd get angry. And now when they tell me to mask, I understand that most of them are doing it from a place of love, or at least concern. They sincerely believe that the best way to succeed if you're neurodivergent is to appear normal or neurotypical. What they don't understand is that you're asking the person to wear a psychological corset. It's the psychological equivalent of putting on a corset. And it's one thing to tell somebody, when you go on interviews, make sure you talk about your value. Lee has said this a lot. That's not ableist.
That's not.
No, I'm not saying don't give people practical pointers like that. But if you're telling someone who's neurodivergent, figure out how to, make better eye contact or try to reduce your twitching. You're setting them up for failure. Even though I actually think most people who give that advice do so from a benign place, it's still cruel. And so my advice to people who are neurodivergent is don't mask. Lean into your strengths. I'm not saying that you shouldn't lean into your strengths. I'm saying, in fact, that not masking is leaning into your strengths.
Well, so just be who you are.
Exactly.
What about people who aren't neurodivergent? They are just kind of clammed up inside themselves, and they're probably very accomplished, but they don't see the extraordinariness. What would you say to them?
I would say that you are extraordinary. I would say that there's a musician whose songs really speak to me, Sia. And she made a movie in 2021 about autism called Music that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I panned it as such. later she came out as autistic herself. And I believe her. I think just because she made a bad movie about autism doesn't mean she isn't autistic.
Right.
Being autistic doesn't guarantee your ability to effectively communicate that in cinema. But her songs, I think, do effectively communicate that. When you listen to songs like Chandelier, even though that's superficially about substance abuse, or you listen to songs like Titanium, which are about embracing your inner strength despite having traits that others might dislike, there are messages in there. So, and Sita
Interesting.
is herself an example of someone who is socially awkward and has struggled a lot, but has still become one of the world's biggest pop stars. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
is proof that you can make it.
This has been remarkable. Matt,
you.
I appreciate your honesty, your directness, the clarity on who you are, what you want to do, and what you want to achieve, the impact that you want to make in this world, and your freely giving of yourself to volunteer for organizations to support,
Yes,
moving the
democracy
country in
at
the right direction.
Democracy at Work, which is run by Dr. Richard Wolff, economist emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Luka, any last questions for Matt before
No,
we?
I've really enjoyed. I could listen to you for hours.
Oh, thank you. That's
Very
very
excited. Yeah, a lot of really cool knowledge pieces. I love hearing about history and how it affects today, and you just have a lot of knowledge in there.
All right.
Got a
Thank you
big
very
brain.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matt.